Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm really delighted to be talking to a very special person today. Um, and I think, over the last 2 days, we've talked about many interesting things related to advanced air mobility, drones, UTM, U-Space. But I'm really delighted that in this session, we can do something different. We can talk about not the industry, perhaps we can touch on it, but let's try and get close to a very special person who's working very hard to make advanced air mobility a reality. So I'm delighted to welcome Michele Merkle, the Director of Air Navigation Bureau at ICAO.
Thank you, Munish. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. I know you've been very busy. Yes. I know you were here a couple of days ago, very busy in panels, and then yesterday you had to go to Rome and then fly back. So right. You really have been a busy bee.
I have been.
You indeed.
It's all good.
Yeah, indeed. Now, that's probably a mark of a senior leader and probably gives us all a snapshot of what it's like to be a leader. But I'd like to go deeper into it and try and learn from you, and perhaps also share, perhaps you could share some views about advice for youngsters, as they embark on their journey, starting immediately after their university or college. What is it that they find special about successful leaders? What are their journeys? How did they go about? And I think everyone wants and needs to have a role model. So it'd be great to share with you, for you to share with them on your journey. So let me just, first of all, kick it off. Perhaps just to start, you could tell us how your career really unfolded and what was the journey you took from the time, maybe not even when you joined the university, but even before the university. How did it all happen? Okay. Share with us, please.
Thank you. I'm happy to share, and honestly, at this point in my career, I'm kind of at the end of my journey, even though it's I've got a lot going on right now with my position at ICAO. But so I love to share with people who are at the beginning of their journey. I think it's very important. You and I were talking about a few minutes ago, back when we started our careers, the options seemed very limited. Or I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and so I knew about doctors and lawyers and veterinarians and things like that. So I started and I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a doctor. Well, by the time I got to college, I said, I'm going to be an engineer. I didn't even really know what engineers did, to be honest, right? And so, because I realized maybe I don't like people that much. Maybe being a doctor's not the right job for me. So I thought maybe equipment engineering. I'll be an engineer. And then I went to school and I went to this engineering orientation and I learned about civil and mechanical and structural and all these different types of engineering. And I thought, oh, maybe I don't want to be an engineer, And then I learned about industrial engineering, which was more about the process of making things versus the product themselves. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll do that. And then when I got into the industrial engineering program, I learned about human factors engineering, which was really designing that human equipment interface. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe I could bring people back into the picture here for me. And so I did become an engineer. I got a degree, undergrad in industrial and systems engineering, master's in industrial engineering and operations research, and then I specialized in human factors engineering. And so at the beginning of my career, I had two objectives: live in California and work on a complex system, right? I didn't want to build widgets. I really wanted to work on something complex. And so that was the aerospace industry, I got my first job. I only applied for jobs in California. And I got my first job at what is now Boeing Aircraft, but it was Douglas Aircraft Company at the time. And I worked on the C-17, which was still is a military transport aircraft. and I got to lay out the flight deck for the aircraft, and I worked on the electronic displays. And it was a great, amazing opportunity for somebody right out of graduate school to have that level of experience. And again, when I went there, somebody came and piled a stack of books on my desk and said, "You're going to work flight controls." And I was like, "What's a flight control?" Okay, so I've come a long way, I'll say that. But I loved it, and honestly, still to the day that I see a C-17 fly overhead, just puts a big smile on my face. For all I know about aviation and how planes fly, it still amazes me every day to see it happen. And so, I was working on the C-17, and then after several years, it was going into test. We kind of were finished with the engineering and production, starting production and test, and I thought, I don't want to move out to the desert and do testing. I like engineering. I want to build things. And so the Federal Aviation Administration was going through a big modernization initiative. This is in the late 80s, right. The Advanced Automation System. And so we had friends who worked there and said, there's all these consultant companies there that are hiring people to work for the FAA and work on the air traffic control system. And we thought, that sounds pretty challenging. Is it ever? I can tell you. Spending the next 34 years working on it, right? Modernization is a long process, right? Pace makes the race, is what I say. So anyway, moved to the Washington, D.C. area and worked as a consultant for the FAA for 11 years, and then joined the FAA and worked as a civil servant for the next 23 years on air traffic modernization. So I've had a wonderful career in aviation, just have been so fortunate, and really had the opportunity to alternate working advanced concept development and research and prototyping, and then I'd be like, man, I gotta field something. This is great, but I need some closure. I need to see something get out there. And so then I would go and I'd work on a system. I'd work for a program office, and I worked on the Oceanic Air Traffic Control System. I worked on the en route voice communication system. But I'd alternate. I was an author of the Next Gen, which is the FAA's modernization program. I authored the operational concept, and I did a lot of the research for trajectory-based operations and system-wide information management, and a lot of those things that are enablers for the AAM operations that we're talking about today. So I really had a great opportunity to both work on programs and deploy systems, and then go and do research for 6 years, and then be like, it's time to go deploy something again. So I'd go to another program. And so, in my career, I had the opportunity to really work from research and concept development all the way through to system implementation, which is pretty unique. I think that people get to do such a diverse span of the life cycle of a product, right? And so that really set me up. I should say, so over the years, my focus kind of moved a little bit out of human factors and more on the system engineering side of things, including I became the director of system engineering for the FAA, and I held that position for many years. And so the work that I did at the FAA spanned communication, PBN, automation, like I said, TBO, weather systems. So, really a diverse portfolio, which then set me up very well to be the director of the Air Navigation Bureau at ICAO, because my portfolio was very, very broad. There are 19 annexes to the Chicago Convention, which cover all aspects of aviation, and 17 of those annexes fall under me. Right. So again, it's everything from pilot licensing and operations to air traffic management, weather, safety management system, you name it. And it's all stuff really, most stuff that I dabbled in, but I'm still learning. So I think that's the other important thing. Always make career choices where you will continue to learn. Even at this stage of my career, I'm learning because I generally worked more on the air traffic management side and the ANSP side of the house, not on the aviation safety certification side of things. But now those topics fall under me as well. Like I said, pilot licensing, airworthiness. So again, it's still at this point in my career opportunities for me to learn every single day, and that's really what makes work interesting, right? Is to have the opportunity to learn every day, I would say.
It's amazing, really. If I was to unpick some of the things you said, just to summarize, so having a diverse portfolio is one. You were never really, let's say, scared to go into different aspects of the industry. That's amazing. I think the other thing I liked, and I was quite inspired to learn from you, is that as you were learning and trying to figure out what to do, you went with the flow.
Yeah.
You went with the flow as such. Something that I see doesn't happen these days. I've got two young kids myself, a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old, and the number of discussions we have about, I want to do this or I want to do that, but I only don't want to do this if it gives me X, Y, Z in 10 years, and then in another 15 years, it doesn't matter how you talk to them, you can't script these things. And you may have a view that you want to go in a northeast direction, but exactly it's got to be 45 degrees northeast and not 65 degrees southwest. You don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I applied for my first jobs, obviously, out of college. I applied for the first jobs at the FAA. And then my whole career at the FAA, I don't think I ever really searched for a job again, right? They sort of come to you. And again, I've been so fortunate, like timing was always right, because I had opportunities, including, for example, when I was a consultant for the FAA, I had opportunities to join the FAA in the air traffic organization. And at the time I was like, no way, I'm not an air traffic controller. I'll be a fish out of water, I'll never be accepted. 20 years later, I set up an entire brand new organization in the air traffic organization to focus on getting the controllers to adopt these new technologies that I'd been working on my whole career. So, but it was the timing, right? Timing kind of is everything. So I just, opportunities would come and you just have to sort of think about, is this the right time to take on this new challenge? And I've been, like I said, very, very lucky in my career.
Really, I think the other lesson that you're highlighting that you've learned and others could possibly learn from you as well is you followed your passion.
Yeah.
You followed your passion. And I wouldn't be surprised if I asked you when you wake up in the morning, or you have done over the last so many years of working in this industry, have there been any moments in the morning when you said, no, I've had enough. I don't want to go to work now. I want to do something completely different?
Well, I can tell you on some of these challenging days, I do think, I could be retired. What is wrong with me? Why am I doing this? But really, it is the passion, and I think in the aviation industry, that's what you find. We see people and it's like, I can't believe they're still around. But people, once you're in, it sucks you in this industry, and once you're working in aviation, I find most people love it. And I think that's, to me, maybe it's one of the challenges with trying to recruit young people into the industry today. I have a 22-year-old daughter myself, and have worked, the last many years trying to recruit millennials into aviation. And this idea of going to an industry and staying your entire life. I just don't think it's how people really think today. And because aviation, it is complex. It's a very steep and long learning curve to really become an expert in different areas. And so, that might be intimidating for people, thinking you can't contribute unless you're going to stay your whole career, but I don't think that's the case, because we need new ideas. We need new people coming into the industry, and I think you can contribute early on, and my guess is once you get in, you're going to want to stay anyway. So
I tell you what, I can vouch for that. I'm actually from the telecoms industry myself, and had nothing to do with aviation. But when I accidentally joined the industry, I've been here since then.
Yeah.
It's just so exciting. I think one of the other things, and it's interesting how you highlight the new generation and how they see aviation. When young people look at the aviation industry, they think of flying and everything related to going from place one to place B, the romantic side of industry and all the rest of stuff. They probably don't appreciate what goes behind the scenes to make it what it is as such. And I think perhaps, I don't know what you think, does more need to be done to make them aware of the various aspects within the aviation that could be interesting for them? Because at the end of the day, for them, they want to do what's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah,
so we've got to make it cool.
We do need to, but it is cool right now. I mean, this conference is a perfect example of how cool it is, right? So, again, when I started, aviation was still pretty exciting. Aerospace is where the complex work was being done. But I think, to the professionals in this room, flying is so commonplace. I got on a plane yesterday. I went to Rome and came back, in a day. And it's like getting in a car. But do you realize still less than 10% of the world's population have ever been on an airplane, right? And so it's not commonplace for most of the world. It's commonplace for those of us in this room, but I think you have to have that broader perspective, and I think that's what this offers, particularly the whole topic of air mobility, advanced air mobility. I think it's very in tune with the sensibilities and the values that young people have today in terms of sustainability, the opportunity to connect the world. Yesterday I was at World Food Program and seeing what they're doing, with just disaster relief, emergency, humanitarian aid. They showed me pictures of children that when they're asked, where does your food come from? The sky, because that's the only way food has ever been delivered to them. So, the opportunity for unmanned vehicles to go into these danger zones and do humanitarian relief and provide essential food and services, it's, and then the environment, the opportunities right now that we can tap into for climate change, to support UN sustainable development goals, right? We have a net zero carbon emissions goal by 2050. We have sustainability development goals around improving communities, improving access to sustainable fuels, clean energy, connecting the world. So these are all opportunities, I think, that advanced air mobility, just really unmanned operations really can serve us well.
That's true, and I think this offers another criteria for a lot of the new people entering in this industry, because the advanced air mobility it's aviation, but it's slightly more than an aviation. It's not exactly in that sweet spot that we know itself, and that has the cool factor to it.
I mean, I wish I was starting my career all over, because Again, as a human factors engineer, this is a whole nother
is.
world
It
of
is.
human factors challenges that these new types of operation bring as we move to artificial intelligence, reliance on automation. Through my career, automation has been as a decision support tool, right? Decision support for controllers, for pilots, but now it's moving to be much more than that, right? We're moving to autonomous vehicles, and so it is a really exciting time.
It is. So let's go back to your career. Now, really very rich and informative way that you've evolved through your career. Surely you must have had some oops moments. Share with us at least one of those oop moments, really.
So many.
The best one, please.
Well, I'll tell you a fairly recent one. So I was pretty new in the job. It was like my first month at ICAO. I just started there in July. And I took my first mission was to Africa. I went to Nairobi it's called AFI Week, and it's the African Indian Ocean area of Africa. And I was there for a conference, and that was overwhelming enough because I knew nothing. I knew nobody, right? Fish out of water there. Every time somebody'd ask me a question, you're just startled. But so I get back from that trip, and literally the next day I'm opening up this huge conference that my organization's sponsoring at ICAO, AN World, Air Navigation World, and I'm giving the opening speech. And instead of welcoming everyone to AN World, I welcome them to AFI Week. And then I proceed apparently like 2 more times because I'm trying to give a speech without notes, which was a really bad idea, especially when you're jet lagged. Like 2 more times I called it AFI Week instead of AFI or AN World, right? And didn't even realize that I'd done it till I got off stage, and then people told me, and I was appalled, but luckily, thanks to artificial intelligence, the comm team kind of bleeped out my mistakes and changed the wording before they put it out, on the web, the taped recording of it. So again, these things happen all the time. You just have to laugh it off,
Only proves you're human.
You're human, right? You're human, and,
So
and jet lag takes its toll.
It does. And as you travel a lot, so I'm sure you experience that. If there was a gigantic big billboard, and it had to summarize Michele Merkle, what would it say? What do you think it would say?
Well, so many different things it could say.
It would have to be very big, of course.
Pace makes the race is probably one of my favorite sayings for so many different aspects in life. But right now it would probably say it's my birthday month, because it is my birthday month, and I love to celebrate my birthday month. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so pace makes the race. I like that. Okay. Now, there's a lot of advice that can be given to a lot of young people on what they should or shouldn't do. Is there any piece of advice that you find that you can offer to others, but you find it difficult to follow it yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I think the one thing that challenges me most and challenges certainly most senior professionals is to have a good work-life balance, right? And so it's one thing I'm always telling my employees, you need a work-life balance, but it's, I'm very challenged myself to do that. It's so easy, even on a day off, I think, well, I'd rather just keep up with email, than go back after several days and be overwhelmed. But before you know it, 5 minutes is 2 hours, and there you are working on your day off. And it just, it's really challenging. But I think really getting away from the devices and the business is really important, I think, for your mental health. And of course, exercise, which I'm not doing enough of, and eating well and not drinking too, all those things that are good for you, I'm really bad at.
So when you do have to go away from the business and the emails and everything that iPhone offers you, where do you go for a me moment, your moment?
Yeah.
This is
Well, I do like to get away by myself. So it's funny, I've always been an extrovert, but I am finding as time goes on and I'm always around people and sort of always on stage, I'm becoming more of an introvert and needing more downtime. I also notice, like, for vacation, I have always been one who liked to urban vacations, right? I like to go to cities and tour monuments, museums, churches, versus go lie on a beach anywhere. Now, man, a beach sounds so good right now, like just get out of the city, not be in traffic and noise, and really have quiet time. When I worked in DC, I used to love to go. We have the Smithsonian museums. We're all around FAA headquarters, and so I used to love to just go pop in a museum for 30 minutes. They were all free. It was just wonderful. Sculpture museum. I was right across the street from the Air and Space Museum or the Gallery of Art. In Montreal, I live right on a canal.
Right.
And so just going out on the canal and taking a nice long walk, but just me, quiet time is really nice.
That's good. So let's try and get to know you a bit more then. So if I give you a few options and you had to select, let's see what you would select. That'll help us get to know you.
Okay.
Let's take food.
Oh, love food.
Mexican, Spanish, Chinese,
Italian.
Indian.
Italian,
Okay.
hands down.
Now the
Italian.
Italians in the audience are very happy
Italians,
right now.
hands
Of course.
down. Yeah, I was so happy in Rome yesterday. My only request, because literally it was a day trip, I'm like, if I don't get a bowl of pasta while I'm here, okay? So.
Okay. Your best movie, your best film.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't think I could name one. I love movies. I love everything from comedies are certainly a great source of relief, right? So a good comedy, but I love a Guy Ritchie film or kind of action, fun, adventure stuff. So all kinds. Good drama. I used to love more serious films, but again, I think I'm getting away from that and just more mental relief. I think I'm looking at movies more for than the intellectual value of them these days. So.
And your favorite book?
Favorite book? I'm reading sort of a mindless one that I've evolved to more mindless sources of entertainment, I think, for everything with books and movies these days versus more intellectual things, I would say.
Okay.
But
Okay, right. Now let's try and understand your dynamic with your team and how you motivate your team itself. Do you have fun moments with your team? Do you guys kind of just...
Yes, so I've always been one. I love levity. I think you can have a fun and happy environment and still do the serious work that needs to be done, but you can have fun at it. So I've always enjoyed, a little laughter, in the environment. I've always liked to sponsor picnics and happy hours and just social events I think are really important for team building, and so that's one of the things since I've been at ICAO. I think since COVID, people complained that it sort of took the fun out of work, right? Because we moved from an environment where everybody was in the office and everybody knew each other and they knew each other's families and where everybody lived and used to get together and socialize. And then for 2.5 years, we only saw each other on screen. And, we tried Zoom happy hours and all of that, but, it just never really was the same. And I think as we've gotten back into the office, people miss that. I think people miss fun, and that's the feedback I've been getting from my employees is we want to have fun at work again. And so I did put together a team that I asked them to come up with team building ideas, is what we're calling them, but it's really fun ideas, right? And so there are these dragon races. It's a kind of rowing that there's like 23 people on the boat. I'd never heard of it, but we're trying to put together a team to do that. We're going to have a curling team. That's a big thing in Canada, curling. We're going to have a big picnic this summer. So we're trying to find some fun events to get people. We started a Thursday casual. The one great thing about ICAO, which was very different than the federal government in the U.S., there's no alcohol allowed, man, 50 feet from a building, let me tell you. But at ICAO, it's part of the culture, right? And so Thursday afternoons, people are starting to socialize, with wine at work, and just a very different culture, very different environment. And so we're trying to take advantage of that a little bit.
There's a piece of advice for youngsters and anyone really. Next time you find a job specification or a job advert from ICAO, please look out in there if alcohol on a Thursday afternoon is allowed or not. I think that's a great motivator.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I remember the times a few years ago, of course, here in Europe as well, Friday afternoon used to be the time to go into the bar or a pub with your friends and just have a light drink and really get to know each other and stuff. But yeah, times have changed, no doubt.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your team. Now, we are in the industry of aviation, whereas on one hand, we need the safety-driven culture, no doubt. On the other hand, we also need innovation to improve things and all that. How do you balance that in your team? How do you encourage them and motivate them to look at both sides of the fence?
Yeah. Well, to me, innovation, you can find innovative ways to be safe, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the objectives that we have for aviation around safety, efficiency, environmental sustainability, those are all opportunities to innovate, right?
Right.
And so, one of the things I've always found, I think one of the things, particularly engineers can struggle with is groupthink, right? When you work on a team for a long time, it's amazing how you all start to think alike. And so I think that stifles innovation. And so for me, one of the things to inspire motivation is to mix up that team, to bring people on, diversity of thought, honestly. And it's not, again, in the U.S., it was a different kind of environment. So not just gender differences, but ethnic differences, cultural differences. At ICAO, that comes very naturally as an international organization. We have the benefit of tapping into our 193 member states to get our employees. So you do get a lot of diversity of thought, but even diversity in terms of work experience, right? Not just people's backgrounds, but bringing social activists in with traditional engineers or whatever, finance people into the mix. I think it brings a different perspective and it gets people thinking, I hate to say, out of the box, but it really does. And so to me that inspires innovation as well.
It does, and something else I find also here, because we're in technocratic industry, and I work at Eurocontrol, and we are also an amalgam of so many different nationalities all working together. One of the aspects I find there as well, it'd be interesting to learn from you, from your experience, how you see it. Traditionally, technocratic organizations have people who would very much be very good at working on engineering things, operational things. I don't know if it's just a matter of coincidence or something else, we find many people who are quite happy to be left alone, to be doing their own thing. But if they don't share
Right.
the stuff that they do,
Yeah.
and that's internally within the organization, but also externally with their partners, their stakeholders, then a lot of the good ideas, they just stay in the hard disks
Absolutely.
or on documents.
Yeah.
I find that a challenge.
I have always told my employees that, communication is probably the most important skill that they should have, and that everything we do is sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Everything.
I like that
I don't
part.
care what idea you
Yeah.
come up with.
Yeah.
If you cannot convince people that it's a good idea and it should be adopted, then you've wasted a lot of time. It's all about sales, honestly, and being able to sell your ideas.
It's so right, so spot on. I know many examples that I've seen, particularly in Europe, where very interesting, exciting, intelligent, technical people, they had a good start, but then somewhere in the middle, they just kind of lost their way because they thought they had the best thing
Yes,
after
yes,
sliced
yes,
bread,
yes,
right?
yes.
But because nobody else listened
Yes,
to them,
yes.
or maybe they didn't sell it
I've
to
worked
them.
with many people like that in my career.
lost their way.
Everyone's the smartest person in the room. It's amazing, right?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible, really. And I think that's a good piece of advice for youngsters as well as you embark on your journey. Yes, you have your passion,
Yeah.
but you must be able to
Yeah.
sell the idea.
And when I talk about communication being the most important skill, that's listening as well, right? Communicating's not just about talking, it's about listening, right? Because that's really where you learn. It's not effective to have people sharing their different perspectives if you're not hearing them and integrating them into your way of thinking. So I think
Indeed.
that's the way we grow.
The best engineer I've worked with had a degree in psychology. He
Yeah.
had nothing to do with engineering.
Yeah.
Because he had a degree in psychology, he was able to understand the requirements
Yes.
of users.
Yes.
And if you don't understand them well, we can't design.
And honestly, that's the space I come from. As a human factors
Yeah.
engineer, that's what I did. I translated the technical lingo with the operational folks, right? They used to just talk past each other, and I was that translator. That's what I got to do my whole career. It was great.
Now, I can't go on further without asking this question. I was just thinking about how best to break this, but I think there's no better way just to ask anyway. How easy or difficult is it to have a partner who works in the same industry, but also in the same organization? I mean, Jay is a great guy, and a lot of us have worked with him, and we're missing him here, by the way, in
Thank
Amsterdam.
you.
So I hope he was there. How easy? What are the challenges
Yeah.
and what are the benefits?
Yeah. So it's funny. So Munish knows my husband, and we met in graduate school, and we worked side by side our entire career, including at Douglas Aircraft. Literally, our desks were side by side, right? And that was before we were married, but then we both moved to the same consulting firm. He joined the FAA after about 3 years. It took me 11 years, but we both became executives on the same day. We were confirmed by the judge. So literally our paths have truly been in parallel the whole time. So, a couple unique things about that. One, it was always natural. People would be like, how can you work together? And I thought, well, there's lots of spouses that own restaurants together, dry cleaning businesses. I mean, so we're just, in a technical field, but to us it wasn't that unusual. I think for other people, Jay and I would have technical disagreements in meetings just like you and I might,
I'm sure,
right?
I'm
And,
sure.
it's just a professional disagreement, but to other people it's like, oh, are they bickering? What's going on, right? But on the positive side of things, it is so, to get to where I've gotten in my career, you need support, right? You need a network. You need somebody who can support you in raising the child and taking care of the house and doing all that. And, if we want to talk about why there aren't more women in leadership, that's certainly part of that conversation. But I had that, and I had somebody who totally understood when I had a bad day, why I had a bad day, because they could totally relate, right? They were doing the same type of work. And so it really is great to have somebody who truly knows what you do and can empathize and be supportive. So
Next time I meet Jay, I'll tell him that Michele told me about all these things about you. You're a good guy.
yeah, he is a good guy.
No, we all
I
have.
wouldn't have stuck with him 35 years if he
Right,
wasn't
okay.
a good guy, so yeah.
No, we all have our role models and people we draw inspiration from. Who was yours, and what sort of inspiration did you get from that person?
Yeah, again, role models have changed throughout my life,
Yeah.
right? I mean, certainly when I was young, my parents were role models. My father survived the Bataan Death March. He was a prisoner of war 3.5 years in World War II. And from him, I got my pragmatism, right? Because he truly understood what was important in life. When you go through an experience like that, the little things don't matter, right? You focus on what's important. And so I think from him, I drew that skill. My mother was a stay-at-home housewife. She immigrated to the U.S. Right before World War I. She was 17 and put in the first grade because she didn't speak English, And so early on, I had those kinds of role models who taught me my family values, what's really important in life, right? And then as I got into my career, senior female leaders became my role models, right? It's like, oh, they could do it. The chief operating officer at the FAA, she was in charge of 35,000 people, controllers and technicians. She was neither of those. She had a marketing degree, And so as you move through your career and you have imposter syndrome, which you will, I can assure you, you look at people like that and you go, if they could do it, I could do it, right? Why are they more qualified than me? And that led me to many of the decisions that I made in my career, including moving into management. I used to think, oh, why do I want to do that? Why do I want to manage people? And, but it's like, if not me, then who? Right? And I can't complain about the manager if I'm not taking the opportunity to step up and be that person, right? So, I think my role models over time changed.
That's interesting, and I particularly like what you said. And again, something not just for younger people, but for everyone really. A role model doesn't have to be a famous personality. A role model can be anyone from your family
Absolutely.
member, a
Anybody
friend.
you look up to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they don't have to do big things to inspire others.
Right.
They can do
Right.
simple things and then become visible.
I mean, but I love, like when we talk about, what do I like to read about or watch on TV, I love inspirational stories about people who've overcome big challenges, because to me it shows us how resilient we are as human beings and how creative we can be, and that really we can overcome many challenges, and those are both personal, professional challenges or industry challenges like we're talking about this week. So
Excellent. Now, Michele, I've got to ask you this as well. Any regrets along the journey?
I think my regrets are more about probably when I wasn't compassionate enough in dealing with people, when I didn't put people first, because again, throughout my career, I've changed in the type of leader I am. I changed in how I deal with people. When you start out very technically, when you're a female, and so I've never seen more than 10% of us, in a room my whole career. And so you have to prove yourself technically, right? It's all about showing how good I was technically. And so when I became a manager, again, it was all about the technical work and how well people performed. And I wasn't asking myself, well, why are they not performing at their best? They should be doing better than that. They should be more capable. And, so again, I still think back of, individual conversations of giving people feedback and stuff that I thought, oh my God, I've totally probably ruined their day, if not longer, by the way I delivered that message, And so again, I used to joke early on when I was the one who was saying we weren't treating our people well, things must be really bad, okay, that I was the one noticing that. I was not always that people first kind of manager, but this is the softer, gentler version of Michele that you're seeing, at this stage in my career. So I think my regrets are about, that.
Which is another lesson for the young people, is that as the career evolves, you're going to have to stay flexible and adapt to the various challenges.
Absolutely.
What you've done well in the first phase of your career, it may not be the same in the next phase, and you just need to be able to, and as you said earlier on, keep learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep learning all the time.
Otherwise, you'll be bored. I mean, who wants to go to do the same thing every day, right? Like, you have to be challenged. You have to be learning.
Yes, indeed. I think the other thing that I hear from fresh graduates coming out, and when I interview them for jobs as well, I ask them, where do you want to be in the next sort of 10 years, and then perhaps later on, where do you see yourselves as a, let's say, halfway through your career? And a lot of them talk about things related to being a good manager, being a good leader, managing people, doing cool things, and all the rest of the stuff. And when you ask them, do you understand what it means to be one as such? And obviously their understanding is what it is for a 21, 22-year-old person. It's all relative as such. But I think it's important to highlight that one doesn't need, leadership means different things. And personal attributes will highlight what kind of leadership they bring, whether it's technical leadership, people handling leadership, or it's influencing others, or being empathetic, others to others and stuff. And I think it's one of the things that I find when I talk to them is that they want answers too quickly. And sometimes it's just a matter of being patient and such. What about you now for the next, I don't know, where do you see things going forward then, Michele? Give us a sense of what's next for you. What do you see? Where do you want to go?
Well, like I said, I recently got to ICAO.
Yeah.
So at a minimum, I'll be there 4 years. That's my, I'm on a fixed term timetable there right now. And so, when I think about how do I want to influence aviation, what do I want my legacy to be there, right? It's kind of how you think in those terms at this stage. And so, in the most basic terms, I always like to leave a place better than how I found it, right? And so I certainly want to do that, and that's with my workforce. Right. When you work for a large bureaucratic organization like that, an international organization where senior leadership comes and goes, over the past, there have been cultural issues, ethics issues, all sorts of things that really can lower morale in an organization. And COVID took its toll. It really did. And so, again, with my workforce, one of the things I'm really focused on is kind of making it a happy place again, right? I mean, I feel like if I can take care of the people, they'll take care of the work. And so that's from a people perspective. And then, I have lofty goals. I would love to lessen the bureaucracy, but I know that's a challenge. We have an interesting governance structure at ICAO. with a board of council members from 36 states that really govern what we can do. And of course, we fall under the United Nations. So there's lots of protocol, policies, processes. And so that's what I'm always asking, every time I am told no, why do we do this? This seems stupid to me.
Yeah.
And I'm told no. It's like, who says, is it the UN policy? Is it the council? If it's just ICAO, I can change that, right? So really looking to see how we can streamline the life cycle development of SARP standards and recommended practices. Timeliness is one of the things we've talked about here. How do we deliver quicker? There's a lot of hoops that you go through to get these standards developed. And so looking for opportunities to streamline those processes and do things quicker is something that I'd love to do at ICAO. Reduce some of the workload. I tell my colleagues at the FAA, don't ever complain about budget again to me. You people have no idea. We have, so little funding at ICAO. We're so, limited in our resources, and we ask so much of our employees. And so using artificial intelligence, just to streamline the work that they do and make their jobs easier. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I want to do at work.
Yeah.
And after that, I'm deciding which beach I'm going to rest on.
I was going to ask you that. So what about the dream holiday and the things that you want to enjoy?
Yeah, I think retirement is probably next after this. This is sort of the climax of my career, I would say. Getting to do what I love on this international scale is just fantastic. It's a great opportunity. And then I really want to enjoy life, just enjoy life.
Excellent. Certainly you deserve it. Everyone deserves it, no doubt.
I agree.
So let's wind up now. I've got one question that I'd like to understand, just to get to know you a little bit more, is if there was a time machine and you could go back in time, say when you were in school, and you had to do the whole thing again, what would be different in what you would do? Would you select the same route? Well, of course, we've just established you flow with it. You can't really be predictable and deterministic.
I wouldn't be, again, I would flow with it, follow your heart, which is what I've done. So I've been very happy with the kind of choices that I've made in life. I think for me, the one thing, you're so stressed early on in your career with every decision that you make. And, I think for me going back, I would just chill more.
Yeah.
I was so stressed when I suffered from migraines for years early on in my life, early in my career. And, I think it just was stress, the pressure you put on yourself. And so, just sort of give yourself some grace, be kind to yourself. Don't worry about making mistakes. You just heard of the one I made, my faux pas that, artificial intelligence can fix it all for you. Right? But really, don't worry about making mistakes. Worry about, are you taking enough challenges and stepping out there enough, putting yourself out there and trying new things. And so that's what I would tell myself if I went back in time. Just don't do anything really stupid that you can't recover from. But other than that, just don't worry about it so much.
Oh, I like that. I'm sure everyone else would like that as well. Before I summarize, I'd just like to ask the audience, if there's anyone in the audience, who would like to ask a question to Michele. There's a gentleman at the back.
Yeah, thank you very much. Martin Jaitza is my name, and I have a question. You've told a lot about learning. Is there anything you would like to learn but you've never done it? Any topic Maybe not only just one skill, but
Oh, that's a
Thank you.
great question. Well, this is where I wish I was a cat and I could come back with like 9 different lives, because absolutely there's so much, you know. I love problem solving, which is why I think I was a good engineer, but I also think I'd be like a great crime scene investigator, you know. I love watching Dateline and those kind of shows, and I think, wouldn't that be, you know, a blood splatter expert or something, you know. I'd love to learn about that, forensic sciences. I'd love to learn, I love to, cooking and baking is a big hobby of mine, but I mean, I'd really love to go to culinary school and really master the skill. So yeah, I could have interior design, architecture, I could have so many more careers, so many things I'd be interested in doing, I'd love to learn, which is why I need to retire at some point so I could start having some of these hobby jobs.
That's excellent. So there's still a lot to do then.
There's a lot
Michele.
to do.
There's a lot to do. Okay, if there are no further questions. Oh, hang on, Barbara.
So thank you, Michele. So one question for you. So if you had to try to help get more female or young ones to get to the aviation, how would you approach it? Because I think at the moment, and it's the same in my industry, don't get me wrong, right? Is how do we make it cool
Yeah,
for female?
yeah,
Because the cool for female is different than for boys.
right.
How would you, are you doing something, how do we bring more female in this industry, and what you will pitch it more for them?
Yeah, I think they need exposure, Barbara. I think they don't get exposed. So again, it's all relative, right? Like I said, growing up in a small town in Ohio, I knew about doctors and lawyers and veterinarians and firemen, right? I didn't even know about engineering at the time. And so I think it's exposure. As I travel around the world, it's been interesting to me. You know, I was in Indonesia, and they have a lot more female pilots than we had in the United States. It's like 6% in the US, and it's like 30% in a country like Indonesia, right? And so I said, my goodness, how could this be? You know, why is it so different around the world? Well, starts with policies, right, at the top levels of government. With the UN having gender equality as a sustainable development goal, gender parity, right? And so I think, you know, for one, as a senior leader, I need to make sure we have those policies in place, because that's important. But then again, on a more basic level, we need to have exposure. We need to be bringing little schoolgirls into ICAO, right? And showing them the cool models of aircraft that we have, and drones, and talking about different career choices in aviation. Again, it was so stereotypical. Women were flight attendants and men were pilots when I was a little girl, right? And so it's just, we have to break those stereotypes, and it's amazing, you know, this many years later that they still exist. So to me, I think those are just some of the fundamentals, you know.
Excellent. Oh, hang on, there's more questions. You hit a nerve, you have, I tell you. Rehan.
I have a question, because you're the director of ICAO.
Yes.
Do we really need to put our telephone on airplane mode when we are flying?
That's funny. Oh, interference. Interference is certainly, yes, one of those things that we worry about. So, and yes, and don't put your battery packs in your cargo luggage either. Okay, so yes, please follow the safety guidance. Yes.
Thank you all for asking questions. So it's been wonderful, Michele, talking to you, learning from you, and I hope everyone else has benefited from it as well. So I think from what I've heard, you've highlighted a number of areas for young guys and young girls to focus on. I'd just like to summarize some of those. Take it easy. You don't have to do everything at one time.
Right.
You can make mistakes and pick up the pieces and start again. Follow your heart.
Yes.
There's a lot of peer pressure these days. I think it's more than from my time particularly, and therefore it's difficult for the young people as well. But try and follow your passion. You use the word many times, passion. Follow your heart, and go with the flow. You don't have to. If you know exactly what you want, fine. But if you don't know, that's all right.
Yes.
There is a place. There's a piece of work. There's a job for you.
Yeah.
It will come to you.
And your career can take, again, mine was fairly linear, but I also made career choices where I took lateral moves and I took steps down. I went down a couple positions in my career by my choice to do the work that I wanted to do. So don't let titles and positions and that type of stuff drive what you do. Right.
That's a very good piece of advice, because that's one thing I see with the young guys, girls these days. They really want to go for the titles. They really do.
People want to be successful, right? And with social media out there, I mean, that's what we see, right?
Yeah.
You know, rich and famous people, and it's like,
Indeed. And success. I mean, success means different things for different people, as such.
Right.
Success could also be being happy within yourself.
absolutely.
It doesn't have to be being a celebrity.
Absolutely.
You also talked about the need to keep a balance between work and life. So important, because our career it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and therefore we need to go with it in a nice pace. You highlighted the need, particularly in a technocratic organization, to work with people, to listen to them, and the power of communication. And communication is not just talking to others, it's also listening. I think that's a very, very, very important lesson for others. The other aspect that I particularly liked, and a good learning for all of us, of all ages by the way, is that you need support at home. You need support, whether it comes from your husband or your family or your friend or your colleague, doesn't really matter. We all need support, because you're going to go from ups and downs, good days and bad days. So that's very important. You talked about a diverse portfolio, so don't get boxed into one as such, but try and keep your options open, because later on it's what you learn from each of those options that are going to help you become the person, the leader that you become. From your itinerary, I know you travel a lot, and therefore it must be that you learn from others, you pick up a lot of good things from others as well, and every individual, every team, every company has something to offer.
Yeah.
Sometimes we know what we're getting out of them, but sometimes it's just subconscious itself. So really, there's a lot. Any last few words from your side?
Yeah, I mean, you know, learn from others, right? Learn from your role models, but you can learn just as much from bad leaders, right? Of like, man, I never want to be like them, right? And so you can learn from everybody, good and bad.
And last but not least, that your role models don't have to be celebrities. They can be people just around you that you work with or live with.
Right.
Little things they do perhaps matter in the long term a lot more than the big things they do.
Right.
As such. So thank you for sharing all
Thank
these
you for
things.
listening. What a great summary.
It's wonderful to learn from successful leaders like you, and I think this piece of advice that you've provided today, when it's shown to others, they will learn from it. And
Hopefully.
I'm sure they'll pick up different aspects from what you've just said today.
Yeah, hopefully.
And all of them are very important. So, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Michele Merkle, our special guest,
Thank you,
a leader
thank
in the air navigation industry. Thank you, Michele.
Thank you very much. This was lots of fun.
Pleasure.
Thank you.